Ladies and gentlemen, this is Thomas Dakan Senior English and French teacher and professional translator, author of the book titled De la Sémantique à la Traduction. Welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to discuss speech act theory, culture, and translation. As you know, speech act theory is a linguistic theory by Austin in his books entitled How to Do Things with Words. It is a linguistic theory or linguistic philosophy which underscore the functional approach to language. When we say functional approach to language here, we are not referring to what we are not referring to Roman Jakobson works on language. As a reminder, Roman Jakobson distinguishes six main linguistic function, namely the emotive function, the cognitive function, the referential function, the phatic function, the poetic function, and the metalingual function. We are not discussing speech act theory in terms of this linguistic function. We are rather tackling speech act theory here in terms of what we do with words, as Austin himself put it in his book. So we are looking at what we can achieve with language. In other words, what are we doing with words? Because words are not not mere linguistic tools. Words are, although they are linguistic tools, they actually play a great role in our daily communication. So what we are examining here is the different function that language can perform in a given situation. And as you know, Austin in his works has highlighted two major type of utterances. On the one hand, constitutive, which have to do with factual statement, which may entail describing, informing, suggesting, and so on and so forth. And performative, which clearly indicates action which carry out what we are doing, action which convey what we are doing at the precise moment. That is, we say what we do with words. This is what he called performative. But Austin later arrived at this conclusion. He says constitutive also are part of performative, because if we take an example like performing, if we take an example like informing, which is part of constitutive, or actually observing, this action of observing is part of performative, because when we observe, we are doing an action, and that action is actually, that is why that action falls under performing. So he arrived at the conclusion that constitutive are also part of performative. Now, that said, the question is, what is the link between Austin's speech act theory, culture, and translation? What is the link between the speech act theory, culture, and translation? We have to point out that all of this speech act theory, culture, and translation, all of the three make use of language. They cannot function without language. We discuss speech act theory in terms of language use. We discuss culture in terms of the best tool to express culture, and we talk about translation with regard to languages. So what we have to underscore here is that we translate culture. We translate culture. So in other words, translation is a cross-cultural exercise whereby we adapt meaning. Translation is a cross-cultural exercise whereby we adapt meaning. So this brings in the concept of adaptation in translation. And we will say that adaptation is this kind of translation where culture plays a great role, because we are transferring culture. Is a kind of finding a solution to transfer one culture, that is the source culture, into the target culture. So we are trying to look at the best way to make this come true. That is to express, we have on the one hand the source culture, and on the other hand the target culture. We have to make sure that we transfer the source culture into the target culture. This is what we call adaptation, and that is why this adaptation is related to speech act theory. Adaptation is related to speech act theory because as you can observe it, as you can see it, every culture or every language has its culture, that is its set of rules in order to discuss, to address certain issues. If we take an example like apologizing in the English culture, you see, if you say, for instance, sorry for the inconvenience, you see, this is how English speakers, this is how they say sorry. But in a French context, we are going to transfer this culture in a French context, and we have to know the culture of the French people. So when we know the culture of the French people, we are going to come back to pragmatics, because pragmatics help us choose the best formulation in context. So when an Englishman say sorry for the inconvenience, in French we are not going to render this word for word. This is where pragmatics play a huge role, because translation has to do with the purpose of the communication, and that purpose is what we call as Hans Vermeer. That is what Hans Vermeer is discussing when he talks about the scopus theory. Be it Hans Vermeer, Katharina Rice, or Cristiano, when they discuss the scopus theory, they are highlighting how crucial is the goal of translation. And that goal, obviously, is the illocutionary dimension of an utterance. That's why we understand that culture, translation, and speech act theory are all related, because the speech act theory gives us an item of information which is considered as the goal of a communicative situation, because communication entails achieving a goal, and that goal may be, as we put it, let's say apologizing. So when we say sorry for the inconvenience, what we are the illocutionary dimension here, or the function of language here, not in terms of Jacobson theory, but in terms of speech act theory, in terms of language being considered as a communicative tool or a communicative exercise, and translation being considered as a cross-cultural exercise, the intention here, the illocutionary force here entails apologizing. And when we transfer this into the French culture, we need to find the best way to express apologies in French. You will not say désolé pour le préjudice. Formally, French will say nous vous prions de bien vouloir nous excuser pour le désagrément ou pour la gêne occasionnée. So, this is contextual translation or pragmatic translation. That is, we adapt. This is what is pretty much interesting here. That when we discuss speech act theory, culture, and translation, we come to understand that the three notions are correlated, because the speech act theory gives us the illocutionary dimension of the message, which we emphasize in communication. And this illocutionary aspect of the message is actually put across based on the culture of the target text. So we will not enter into bondage, into what I can call lexical bondage. That is, we simply substitute words, that we use words simply. We are looking at the illocutionary dimension of the message based on the culture of the target language and based on the context. So we see that when we actually gather translation, speech act theory, and culture, we find ourselves with what we call adaptation. So when we say that adaptation is actually that type of translation which involve these three notions, that is the speech act theory, culture, and translation. So we adapt in terms of the illocutionary dimension and in terms of the culture of the target text. So to conclude, let us say that adaptation is that son or that baby that baby who comes from speech act theory, translation, and culture. In other words, we can only adapt in terms of speech act theory, in terms of the illocutionary dimension of an utterance, in terms of the culture of the target language, and in terms of translating that illocutionary dimension. So that's what we can say about speech act theory, culture, and translation. I hope you will find this video interesting. Please don't forget to share, to subscribe, and to leave your comment under the comment section below. Thank you very much.